Leave your house keys. You're not welcome here. That's what my sister said, standing up at our family's Christmas party. Her voice cutting through the clinking glasses and holiday chatter. She raised her wine glass like it was a toast, but her words were a blade. In front of our entire family, cousins, aunts, uncles, she declared, I didn't deserve the house I'd built with my own money. My mom smirked her eyes, glinting with something cold. My dad just stared at his plate. No one spoke. The room felt like it was holding its breath. I didn't scream or beg. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my keys, and set them on my plate right between the roasted turkey and cranberry sauce. Then I looked at them, my sister, my parents, and said, It's okay. The bank will be glad to see you. I turned, walked out into the freezing December night, and shut the door behind me. They didn't know the house was in my name alone, or that the next morning the bank would call them about a $2 million loan. They tried to pull behind my back. That moment changed everything. If this family betrayal hits home, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about the wildest holiday drama you've seen. Let's dive into how this Christmas party turned into my fight for everything I'd built. Let me take you back to where this all started before that Christmas party flipped my life upside down. I'm Emma Brooks, and I'd spent years grinding as an interior designer, taking every freelance gig to save for something my family thought was a long shot, a house of my own. Growing up in Asheville, North Carolina, I was the one who kept my head down. I got good grades, paid my bills, and never asked for help. Amanda, my sister, was the opposite, always chasing some half-baked idea, quitting jobs faster than she started them, and leaning on our parents to clean up her messes. They called her creative, the one who needed a safety net. Me, I was just Emma, expected to fend for myself. At 28, I found a beat-up craftsman house on the edge of town. It wasn't much faded paint, creaky floors, a roof leaking in 3 spots, but I saw what it could be. I'd saved $60,000 every cent from late nights sketching layouts and picking out tiles for clients. No one else in the family gave that house a second thought. Amanda scoffed, called it a money pit. My parents didn't even bother to drive by, but I didn't need their validation. I signed the mortgage, $200,000, 30 years. No co-signers, just me. That first night, standing in the empty living room with a flashlight, I felt something rare, pride. Fixing that house became my everything. I learned to wield a sander, replaced every window myself, and spent weekends covered in drywall dust. I turned the sagging porch into a wraparound deck, painted the walls warm ivory, and built a kitchen island with my own hands. It took 3 years and every dollar I could spare. I'd come home from client meetings, throw on overalls, and work past midnight. Amanda stopped by once, glanced at the half-finished floors, and said, Why bother? It's just you. My parents never showed up too busy bailing Amanda out rent car payments, whatever she needed. When the house was finished, it looked like it belonged in a magazine. Oak floors glowed under skylights I'd installed. The backyard had a stone fire pit I built from scratch. Neighbors started dropping by asking for tours. Suddenly, Amanda took notice. She'd call her voice dripping with fake sweetness, saying, That place is so big for one person. Or, Imagine how happy my son would be with a yard like that. My nephew, her 6-year-old, was a sweet kid with a gap-toothed grin. She'd bring him over, let him run around, then hint they needed a stable home. My parents joined in. My mom would say, You've done so well, Jennifer. You should share your blessings. My dad quieter, but sharp asked once, That house is a lot for one person to handle, isn't it? I brushed it off at first. I wanted to believe they were just being family, maybe even proud, but their words lingered like a warning you don't heed until it's too late. I'd poured everything into that house, my savings, my time, my heart. It wasn't just a building. It was proof I could create something lasting, something mine. Yet, every time Amanda or my parents brought it up, a knot tightened in my gut, like they were eyeing something I'd fought for alone. Looking back, I should have caught the hints. Their questions weren't random. They were calculated, setting the stage for that Christmas party when everything I'd built was nearly ripped away. After those early comments about my house, I tried to focus on my work, my routine, anything to shake the unease creeping into my thoughts. I'd spent years building that craftsman into my sanctuary, but Amanda's sudden interest and my parents' offhand remarks started to feel like warning signs. It wasn't just their words, it was the way they lingered, like they were testing me, probing for weak spots. I'd catch myself double checking the locks at night, wondering why their questions about my house felt so pointed. Amanda started showing up more often, always with my nephew in tow. She'd walk through my living room, eyeing the skylights, running her hand over the oak banister I'd refinished. "This place is too much for one person," she'd say, her voice casual but sharp, like she was planting a seed. Once she brought up her son's school, how he needed a better environment, a bigger yard. "He'd love it here," she said, watching me closely. I smiled, offered her coffee, but my stomach twisted. She wasn't just visiting, she was sizing up my home. My nephew would race around the deck laughing, and I'd feel a pang of guilt for suspecting her. He was just a kid caught in her plans. Then my mom started calling. She'd never been one for small talk, but suddenly she was full of questions. "Do you have all the paperwork for that house sorted?" she asked one afternoon, her tone too sweet, like she was fishing for something. "You know it's a big responsibility owning property." I mumbled something about having everything filed, but her words stuck. Why did she care now? She hadn't asked about the house when I was tearing out rotten floorboards or maxing out my credit card for new plumbing. My dad was subtler, but no less strange. During a rare dinner at their place, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You ever think about putting the house in a family trust? It would be easier to manage, easier for who I wanted to ask," but I just nodded my fork, hovering over my plate. The questions kept coming, each one a little bolder. Amanda called one evening asking if I'd ever considered adding a co-owner to the deed. For tax purposes, she said, like she'd read it in a manual. I laughed it off, told her I had it under control, but my hands were shaking when I hung up. Another time, my mom dropped by, unannounced, first time in years, and asked to see my mortgage papers. "Just to make sure you're protected," she said, her eyes darting to my file cabinet. I said they were with my accountant, a lie that came too easily. She didn't push, but her smile was tight like she knew I was dodging her. By summer, their hints weren't hints anymore. Amanda started talking about her son's future, how he deserved a stable home, how my house was practically a family asset. My parents backed her up, their voices soft but insistent. "You've always been so independent, Jennifer," my mom said once, her hand on my arm. "But family shares, that's what we do." Shares what I thought. The house I'd paid for alone. The knot in my gut tightened. A mix of anger and dread. I started keeping my documents in a safe, not just the file cabinet. I'd lie awake replaying their words, wondering what they were planning. One night, Amanda texted me a photo of my nephew playing in my backyard, captioned, "This could be his home someday." That's when it hit me. They weren't just talking. They were building up to something bigger, something that would unravel everything I'd worked for. I didn't know what yet, but I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. Their words, their visits, their questions, they were pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve, but I had to. That Christmas party was just months away, and I had no idea how far they'd go. By December, the unease I'd felt for months had settled into a quiet dread, like a storm you know is coming, but can't predict. I'd locked my documents in a safe, checked my mortgage statements twice a week, but nothing prepared me for what happened at our family's Christmas party. It was hosted at my parents' house in Asheville, a tradition since I was a kid. I walked in carrying a homemade pecan pie, hoping for a night of peace, despite the warning signs. The dining room buzzed with cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone laughing, passing plates of ham and mashed potatoes, the air thick with holiday cheer. I forced a smile, trying to blend in, but Amanda's glances kept catching me off guard. Halfway through dinner, Amanda stood up, her wineglass raised like she was about to give a toast. The room went quiet, forks pausing midair. "Jennifer doesn't need that big house all to herself," she said, her voice loud, steady, slicing through the chatter. "She's not even starting a family. It's not fair to keep it from those who need it, like my son." My nephew sitting next to her looked down, picking at his plate. My chest tightened, but I didn't speak. I looked at my mom, hoping she'd say something, anything. Instead, she smirked, her lips curling in a way that made my blood run cold. My dad stared at his napkin, his hands folded tight. No one else moved. Cousins froze. Aunts avoided my eyes. Uncles shifted in their seats. Amanda wasn't done. "Leave your house keys, Jennifer," she said. Her eyes locked on mine. "You're not welcome to keep it all to yourself." The words hit like a slap, echoing in the silent room. I felt every stare, every held breath, but I didn't flinch. My mind raced months of their questions, their hints, Amanda's visits, my mom's fake concern about my paperwork. It all clicked. They weren't just asking for my house. They thought they could take it. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing the cold metal of my keys. I pulled them out, set them on my plate next to the untouched turkey, and looked straight at Amanda, then my mom, then my dad. "It's okay," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut. "The bank will be glad to see you." Amanda's smile faltered just for a second. My mom's smirk vanished. My dad's head snapped up his eyes, narrowing. I didn't wait for a response. I pushed my chair back, stood, and walked out the front door, slamming behind me. The December air stung my face as I stepped into the night, my breath visible under the streetlights. I didn't cry or scream. I just kept walking, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and clarity. Their boldness at the Christmas party, so public and unapologetic, showed they believed they had me trapped. But I wasn't defenseless. I'd secured my documents in a safe months ago, sensing their intentions weren't innocent. I'd been checking my mortgage statements, religiously, watching for any hint of tampering. As I walked away from my parents' house that night, I knew something was coming. The next morning, a call from the bank would reveal just how far they'd gone to claim what I'd built with my own hands. The morning after the Christmas party, I woke up in a cheap Asheville hotel room, the weight of Amanda's words still pressing on my chest, her demand to leave my keys, my mom's smirk, my dad's silence. It all replayed like a bad movie. I'd barely slept. My mind stuck on that moment. I set my keys on the table and walked out. My phone sat on the nightstand, buzzing with unread messages from Amanda and my parents. I ignored them, splashing cold water on my face, trying to shake the anger and betrayal. I knew they were up to something, but I didn't know how deep it went. Not yet. At 8:17 a.m., my phone rang an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Ms. Brooks, this is Karen from First Asheville Bank," a woman's voice said, calm but urgent. "We need to discuss an issue with your property." My stomach dropped. "What issue?" I asked, gripping the phone. She hesitated, then said, "Someone attempted to secure a $1.2 million loan against your house using documents with your name. We flagged it as irregular. Can you come in?" I froze, the words hitting like a punch. $1.2 million. My house was worth maybe $300,000 tops. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. I asked Karen to email me the details and hung up my hands shaking. The email came through minutes later, a PDF attachment with scanned documents. There was my name, my address, but the signature wasn't mine. Close, but not mine. Someone had tried to forge it, tying my house to a loan I'd never applied for. Amanda's voice echoed in my head. "You're not welcome to keep it all to yourself." My mom's smirk, my dad's silence. They thought they could pull this off, use my house as collateral for a fortune. My comment about the bank last night wasn't just a jab. It was truer than I'd realized. I didn't waste time. I Googled property lawyer Asheville and found Sarah Newman, a name that popped up with 5-star reviews. I called her office, my voice steady, despite the rage bubbling inside. "I need help," I told her receptionist. "Someone's trying to take my house." They squeezed me in that afternoon. Sarah Newman's office was small but sharp polished wood desk shelves packed with legal books. She was about 40 with a no-nonsense stare that made me feel like I'd found the right person. I handed her the bank's email, the forged documents, and told her everything. Amanda's demands, my parents' questions about my paperwork, the Christmas party showdown. Sarah leaned back, scanning the pages. "This is serious misrepresentation. She said they tried to leverage your property without your consent. We can stop this, but we need to act fast." Sarah explained the next steps, requesting a fraud investigation from the bank, pulling my property records, and filing a formal complaint. "Who do you think did this?" she asked. "I didn't hesitate, Amanda," I said, "and probably my parents." Saying it out loud hurt like admitting a wound I'd ignored too long. Sarah nodded, no judgment in her eyes. "Family cases are tough," she said, But we'll get to the bottom of it. First, we secure your title. I felt a flicker of relief, like I wasn't alone in this fight anymore. Back at the hotel, I pored over the documents again. The forged signature was sloppy, but the intent was clear. Amanda and my parents had planned this for months, maybe longer. Those questions about my mortgage, the hints about sharing the house, it wasn't just greed, it was calculated. They'd used my nephew as a prop, banking on my guilt, to make me cave. But they'd underestimated me. I'd fought for that house every nail, every payment. I wasn't letting them take it. I called Karen at the bank, confirming I'd never authorized the loan. She promised to freeze the application and launch an internal review. "We'll need your affidavit," she said. I agreed, my mind already racing to the next step. Sarah had warned me this was just the beginning. Proving the fraud would mean digging into records, maybe facing Amanda and my parents in court. The thought made my stomach churn, but it also lit a fire. They'd crossed a line, and I wasn't backing down. That night, lying in the hotel bed, I felt something shift. The betrayal still stung, but I had a plan, and I had Sarah. Whatever came next, I was ready. The weeks after the bank's call were a blur of paperwork and late-night calls with Sarah. I'd never been to court before, but now I was needy an affidavit, property records, and emails from the bank. Sarah was relentless, digging into every detail of the $1.2 million loan. Someone had tried to pin on my house. I stayed in that Asheville hotel, avoiding my parents' calls and Amanda's text. I wasn't ready to face them, not until I had answers. Sarah warned me this wouldn't be easy. "Family disputes get messy," she said, flipping through the forged documents. "But we've got a strong case. The bank's already flagged the misrepresentation. Sarah's team pulled my original mortgage records, proving I'd never authorized a second loan. The bank sent over more evidence, emails, application forms, even a digital trail showing someone had used my name and address. The signature was almost convincing, but it wasn't mine. Sarah pointed out inconsistencies. The handwriting wobbled. The dates didn't line up with my financial history. "This was sloppy," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "Whoever did this underestimated you." I nodded, my jaw tight. I knew who it was, Amanda with my parents' backing. The thought of them sitting around planning to take my house made my chest ache, but I pushed it down. Anger was better than heartbreak right now. We filed a formal complaint against the loan application naming Amanda and my parents as potential culprits. Sarah explained we'd need to prove their involvement in court, which meant a hearing. The bank cooperated, sending a representative named Karen to confirm the loan was flagged the moment it hit their system. "Your comment about the bank at the Christmas party?" Sarah said, half smiling. "It was like you knew. I didn't. Not really, but I'd sensed their plan was bigger than Amanda's words at that dinner table." The hearing was set for late January, barely a month after the party. I barely slept replaying Amanda's demand, my mom's smirk, my dad's silence. Sarah prepped me for weeks how to answer questions. Stay calm. Stick to the facts. "They'll try to twist this," she warned. "Make it about family, not the law." I wasn't worried about their words. I was worried about seeing them, about looking into their eyes and knowing they'd betrayed me. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, all dark wood and fluorescent lights. I sat next to Sarah, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Amanda walked in first, her head high like she hadn't done anything wrong. My mom followed her face, blank, no smirk this time. My dad came last, avoiding my gaze. My nephew wasn't there. Thank God I didn't want him caught in this. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes, called the case. Sarah presented our evidence, the forged documents, my mortgage records, the bank's testimony. Karen took the stand, explaining how the loan application raised red flags, wrong signatures, mismatched financial data. Amanda's lawyer argued it was a misunderstanding, claiming she'd only explored options for a family investment. I almost laughed. A $1.2 million loan wasn't an exploration. It was a calculated move. Sarah didn't let it slide. She pressed Karen, who confirmed the application listed Amanda as the primary beneficiary with my parents as co-signers. My heart sank, even though I'd known it was coming. They'd used my house as collateral banking on me, folding under pressure. When it was my turn to speak, I stood my voice steady. "I bought that house with my own money," I said. I fixed it with my own hands. They never helped, never cared, until they saw a chance to profit. Amanda shifted in her seat, her face tight. My mom stared at the floor. My dad's hands twitched, but he said nothing. The judge watched me, her pen pausing. Sarah followed up, showing emails between Amanda and a loan officer sent weeks before the Christmas party. They'd planned it all along, using my nephew as an excuse, my trust as a weakness. The hearing stretched on with Sarah dismantling their defense piece by piece. Amanda's lawyer tried to paint me as selfish, hoarding a house too big for one person. Sarah countered with my financial records, proving every payment came from my account. By the end, the courtroom was quiet, the air heavy with tension. I looked at Amanda, waiting for her to meet my eyes. She didn't. My parents didn't either. They'd gambled on taking what was mine, and they were losing. The judge said she'd review the evidence and rules soon. As we left, Sarah squeezed my arm. "You did good," she said. I nodded, but inside I felt hollow. This wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about family, or what was left of it. 3 weeks after the hearing, Sarah called. "We got the ruling," she said, her voice calm but firm. "The judge voided the loan application. The house is yours, Emma. No liens, no claims." My knees buckled, and I sank onto the hotel bed, relief washing over me like a wave. The bank's investigation had backed us up. Karen's testimony about the forged documents was airtight. The judge ruled the $1 $2 million loan attempt was a clear case of misrepresentation, with Amanda and my parents named as the responsible parties. Sarah added, "They're facing penalties, maybe even a fraud investigation. You're clear." I should have felt like celebrating, but the victory was bittersweet. My house was safe, but my family wasn't. I drove back to my Craftsman that afternoon, the oak floors and skylights welcoming me like an old friend. I walked through every room, touching the banister I'd refinished, the kitchen island I'd built. This was mine, not because of a judge's ruling, but because I'd earned it. Still, Amanda's words from the Christmas party echoed. "You're not welcome to keep it all to yourself." My mom's smirk, my dad's silence. They'd tried to take it all. And for what? A quick payout. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Sarah met me at her office the next day to wrap up paperwork. "You've got options now," she said, sliding a folder across her desk. "You could press charges, push for damages." I shook my head. The idea of dragging Amanda and my parents through another court case felt like sinking deeper into their mess. I just wanted it over. "What about my nephew?" I asked. He was the only one I still cared about, the only one who hadn't chosen this fight. Sarah sighed. "He's a minor, so he's not involved. But reaching out might be tricky with Amanda in the picture." I knotted my throat tight. I missed his gap-toothed smile, his laughter on my deck. But he was tied to them, and I couldn't risk that. That night, I sat on my porch, the February air crisp against my skin. I wrote 3 letters, one to Amanda, one to my mom, one to my dad. I didn't mince words. "You tried to take what I built." I wrote to Amanda, "I trusted you, and you used my nephew to guilt me. We're done." To my mom, "Your smirk at that party said more than words ever could. I don't need a mother who'd rather see me lose." To my dad, "Your silence was worse than their lies. I deserved better." I mailed the letters the next day. No return address. I didn't want replies. I didn't want apologies. I wanted a clean break. Cutting them off wasn't easy. I'd spent years trying to be the good daughter, the reliable sister, hoping they'd see me for who I was. But they only saw what they could gain. I called Sarah to confirm I wouldn't pursue further charges. "I just want to move forward," I told her. She understood her voice, soft but supportive. "You're stronger than they are," she said. I wasn't sure about that, but I was learning. I started small, changing my phone number, blocking their emails. I told my cousins and aunts what happened, not for gossip, but to set the record straight. Some reached out, shocked, offering support. Others stayed silent, loyal to my parents. That hurt, but it clarified things. I didn't need a big family, just one I could trust. My nephew was the hardest part. I set up a small savings account for him, something Amanda couldn't touch for when he's older. It wasn't much, but it was my way of keeping him in my life, even from a distance. Back in my house, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. The victory wasn't just about the house. It was about reclaiming my life. Amanda and my parents could face their consequences without me. I'd fought for what was mine, and I'd won. Now I had to decide what came next, not just for the house, but for me. The road ahead felt open, uncertain, but mine to walk. A year had passed since that awful Christmas party, and I was determined to make this one different. I stood in my craftsman house in Asheville, the oak floors gleaming under the skylights I'd installed with my own hands. The smell of roasted turkey and pecan pie filled the air, mixing with the crackle of the fire pit outside. I'd invited friends, neighbors, and a few coworkers to my first Christmas party hosted on my terms. No Amanda, no parents, no tension waiting to explode. Just people who'd shown up for me when it mattered most. As I set out plates on the kitchen island I'd built, I felt a quiet pride, not just for the house, but for the life I was carving out. Last Christmas, Amanda's words had cut deep. Leave your house keys. You're not welcome. My mom's smirk and my dad's silence had burned even worse. Walking out of that party, I'd felt alone, betrayed by the family I'd tried so hard to please. But now, standing in my living room, surrounded by laughter and clinking glasses, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Sarah, my lawyer, was there sipping wine and joking with my neighbor about Asheville's winter chill. My coworker, Jess, who'd brought a homemade cranberry sauce, was telling stories about her kids. My friend Mark, who'd helped me repaint the porch last spring, was carving the turkey, his apron splattered with gravy. These were my people now, my real family, not bound by blood, but by choice. I'd spent the year rebuilding not just my house, but myself. After the judge's ruling secured my home, I'd cut off Amanda and my parents for good. Their letters sent months ago sat unopened in a drawer. I didn't need their apologies or excuses. They'd tried to buy what I'd built, using a forged loan application to claim a fortune that wasn't theirs. The bank's evidence, paired with Sarah's relentless work, had stopped them cold. My offhand comment that night, "The bank will be glad to see you," had turned out to be more prophetic than I'd known. But the victory wasn't just about keeping the house. It was about learning who I could trust and who I couldn't. I thought about my nephew often, his gap-toothed smile still vivid in my mind. He was 7 now, caught in Amanda's world, and that stung. I'd added to his savings account every month a small gesture to show I hadn't forgotten him. I hoped one day he'd understand, maybe even reach out when he was older. For now, I had to let him go, like I'd let go of Amanda, my mom, and my dad. Cutting those ties had been painful, like losing a piece of myself, but it was also freeing. I didn't have to prove my worth to them anymore. I never should have had to. As the party hummed along, I stepped onto the wraparound deck, the fire pit, casting a warm glow. Jess joined me, handing me a mug of hot cider. "You've got a good thing here, Jen," she said, nodding toward the house. I smiled, the warmth of the mug seeping into my hands. "Took a while to get here," I said. She didn't know the whole story, just bits I'd shared about family drama, but she didn't need to. She'd shown up with that cranberry sauce, no questions asked. That was enough. I looked around at the faces in my home friends who'd helped me move furniture, neighbors who'd dropped off casseroles when I was stuck in that hotel, Sarah, who'd fought for me when I couldn't fight alone. This was what family meant, I realized. Not the people who shared your last name, but the ones who saw your value, who stood by you when things got hard. My parents had called me selfish for keeping this house. Amanda had said it was too big for one person. They were wrong. This house was exactly the right size for the life I was building, for the people I chose to fill it with. The past year hadn't been easy. I'd questioned myself, wondered if I could have done things differently to avoid the fight. But every time I walked through my front door, saw the walls I'd painted, the floors I'd sanded, I knew I'd made the right choice. This house wasn't just a building. It was proof I could stand on my own, proof I didn't need their approval. I'd fought for it, not just in court, but every day I chose to keep going to build something better than what they'd tried to take. As the night wound down, I raised a glass, my voice steady. "To new beginnings," I said, looking at the faces around me, and to the people who make them possible. Everyone cheered their voices, filling the room with warmth. Sarah caught my eye, giving me a nod. Mark shouted to Jen's badass house, and the laughter that followed felt like a release, like letting go of the last shadows of that old Christmas party. I thought about what I'd learned, what I'd carry forward. Family isn't about who you're born to. It's about who shows up, who stays when the stakes are high. I'd lost the family I was given, but I'd found one I chose, and that was worth more than any house, any victory. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever had to fight for what's yours, or learn who your real people are, hit that subscribe button. Share your stories below. I'd love to hear them because at the end of the day, we're all building something and we're stronger when we do it.